Jalen Brunson just took the biggest pay cut in NBA history. He took $100 million less on his next contract to not only become a legend in New York, but also make their run at a title that much easier. Now, when I say this is the biggest pay cut in NBA history, I mean it. There have been times in the past, like when LeBron went to Miami and him and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, all those guys took a little bit less than max deals to make that whole situation work. LeBron offered this offseason to take a pay cut if it meant that they could get to the full mid-level exception. Kevin Durant, when he went to Golden State, took a little bit less to help them add other pieces. It does happen, but on the level that Jalen Brunson just did, it absolutely does not. Had he waited until next summer, Jalen Brunson could have signed a significantly larger contract extension, but instead decided to sign this deal down here, and you can see the difference in these two numbers. Now, there's a little bit more nuance to this. Brunson does give himself the opportunity to get back into free agency earlier. It's a little bit similar to what Donovan Mitchell did with his 3-year deal with the Cavs, where he can get to 10 years of service and then get a big new deal. Brunson's deal is a little bit similar to that, but the bottom line is Jalen Brunson is making like Emmanuel Quickly money. He's making above average point guard money for the next couple of seasons. And in this new era in the NBA with a second apron and the payroll restrictions being so much more stringent now, I can't overstate how big of a deal this is that he did this for the Knicks. Now, there's a whole bigger conversation to be had about whether this is smart or a good idea, or Brunson should have done this in the first place for himself. We're going to have that conversation here in a second. But first, it's really important to illustrate how big of a deal this is and why it's a big deal. Because when you look at the offseason for New York, they just added salary all over the place. They brought back OG Anunoby on a huge deal. They brought in Mikal Bridges, who is going to be extension eligible here pretty soon as well. And the reports are that he might take a similar route in terms of the extension that he's going to take. And they've just got some other guys that are coming up for new deals. And in this new era that we're in the NBA, where the higher your payroll gets, the harder it is to add pieces, Brunson basically just did the Knicks a massive favor. He could have been making so much more money per season, and he had every right to. Jalen Brunson is a top 10 to 12 player in the NBA right now, and he's getting paid like Emmanuel Quickly is. And that allows them to stay under these certain thresholds over the next couple of seasons, depending on how the contracts work out. It allows them to stay under the second apron, allows them to have more payroll flexibility in terms of the mid-level exception, all this different stuff that we've already talked about with these other teams. One of the reasons why the Nuggets lost KCP, one of the reasons why Paul George ended up leaving the Clippers and they weren't willing to give him the big contract. Brunson just basically eliminated that as a possibility for the Knicks. And Mikal Bridges, if he does the same thing, that then gets compounded. It's not like they're going to have max salary cap space or anything as a result of this, but Jalen Brunson is now the single best contract in the NBA. And it's not because the Knicks got him on a good deal initially. It's not because he developed into some kind of crazy good player on a cheap deal. It's not because of some kind of injury issue. It's just because he chose to take that deal. And what that means is that for the next 3 seasons, the Knicks, relative to their talent, have the most payroll flexibility of any team in the league that isn't like Oklahoma City or something like that. Unless you're one of these young teams that has guys on rookie deals, if you're a true contending team like the Knicks are with veteran players on non-rookie deals, relative to their talent, they have the most payroll flexibility in the league. Now, the decision to do this, if you're Jalen Brunson, is very interesting. And this really was the reason why I wanted to make the video, because there's been a lot of conversation around whether he should have done this, what this means for other players. Is this going to set a precedent, whether that be in New York or elsewhere, that players should take pay cuts? Because this has been a conversation for years. All the time on Twitter and elsewhere, I see people say, if players would just take a pay cut, that would mean, one, that they're more willing to go out and be, a winner and build this competitive team. And it would help teams add players. It happens in football. It happens in other sports where guys take less money so that you can field a more competitive team. And the argument, of course, is if you're Jalen Brunson and you're making $30+ million a year already, do you really need to make $40+ million a year? And my interest is not so much in the how much money Jalen Brunson is making thing. It's more so about the health of the league. It's more so about what the league would look like if this was a regular thing. I'm not talking about a couple million here, a couple million here so that you can stay underneath the second apron, get full access to the mid-level exception in a singular offseason. That happens a decent amount, and that's not that big of a deal. But there is a reason that the NBA salary structure is structured the way that it is. If you are someone of Jalen Brunson's caliber, if you're a top 10 to 12 player in the entire league, You are a max contract player and you're supposed to get paid a max. And that's why it's different than some of these other sports. People continue to point out, football as this reasoning for, Tom Brady took pay cuts, all these other guys took pay cuts. Okay, there's no max salary in football. So you negotiate that number and you can want it to be lower to sign a better receiver or this or that. You're more than capable of building a really good NBA team while giving guys that are supposed to have a max like Jalen Brunson a max. And I have talked about this. This is going to make me sound super old. Over half a decade ago, on this channel, when Kevin Durant took a pay cut to go to Golden State, when Chris Paul didn't want to take a pay cut when he was in Houston, I talked about this for a while. If you think that this is a good idea, if you think that teams and players should negotiate pay cuts, I'm telling you it does so much more harm than good. I don't think it's particularly going to matter that much for Brunson because I don't think other players are really going to take this up. But if they were to, if this did become a trend, we would be in a situation where teams would have the opportunity to build like Kevin Durant Golden State level super teams. Because theoretically, technically, if you're going to make the argument that, well, they're already making, in Brunson's case, 30 plus a year, why does it need to make 40 plus a year? Well, that argument can extend to, for example, the last decade of LeBron's career. He's made plenty of money. He could make $1 on his NBA contract and be totally set for life. He's got all this other stuff going on outside of basketball. And theoretically, he could take a $9 to $10 million a year contract, and then they could add, this guy. They could have added Paul George this offseason because that guy gets to come in and take the max when LeBron doesn't. And so, yes, they're making a ton of money, but within the structure of the league, within the salary structure, they're meant to make a lot of money so that you can't put together these super teams. Now, obviously, the LeBron example is an extreme one, and players are not just going to start taking $30 million pay cuts on a yearly basis. But I saw a lot of discussion about this yesterday where people said, man, Jalen Brunson really wants to win. And that's true, by the way. I applaud him for taking the pay cut. He's better than me. I certainly would have done it. I applaud him for taking the pay cut. I applaud him for understanding the payroll restrictions that it puts the team under. But just to be clear, within the salary structure of the NBA, Jalen Brunson is worth and deserves that contract that he decided not to take, to wait until next season. It was well within his rights to take it, and I applaud him for not taking it. And I'll be interested to see if this becomes a trend over the next couple of seasons. But if it does become a larger trend on the scale that other people want it to, where it's one of these things where guys are taking 10 to 20 to $30 million pay cuts every single season, I promise you that does more harm than good. And at the end of the day, it's Jalen Brunson's choice, right? Like, he can do whatever he wants to, and there are going to be, I can guarantee you right now, by the time you get to this point in the video, if you scroll down, there's someone saying in the comments that I'm just saying this because I'm a Nets fan. It has nothing to do with my fandom. I want the Knicks to be good. Like, obviously the draft pick stuff, it'd be ideal if they weren't that good in a couple of seasons, but for the health of the league, it's definitely better for the Knicks to be good. I've said that in tons of videos over the years, and I think it's fantastic for the Knicks. I would just be concerned, and I fight back on this idea that this would be good for the league if star players took pay cuts, because then you're going to be in a situation where all of these stars are going to potentially group up in this like Miami Heatles, KD Warriors situation. And in terms of parity, which is a stated goal of the league, that is just not what they want. That's not what anybody wants, is to have those kinds of teams just making the finals every single season. And if it was to happen, if let's just say a year or two from now, it just becomes commonplace for max caliber players like Jalen Brunson to take $10 to $15 million less than they should, I can almost guarantee you that the CBA, the next time it comes around, would have a provision in there that stipulates if you're an All-NBA, if you make All-NBA, you have to earn a max or something close, depending on how old you are. Like, the league wouldn't just allow guys to take pay cuts the way that Brunson just did. And like, whether you think that's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. The league's stated goal is to have parity, and obviously the whole point for them is to have a highly competitive league. And the way that it works out for Brunson is perfect, because it's not like it gives them salary cap space. It just allows them flexibility under the second apron. Awesome. Great for him. Great for the Knicks. But as a trend in general, this is absolutely a slippery slope, and I'm not sure people have fully realized that yet.